I'm gonna have to defend my beloved. Yeah, my beloved.
Can you defend the translation?
No, not really.
So, Cheery, when you first played this, were you playing it by yourself? Were you playing it with siblings? Like, what was your experience?
My first experience. So, right.
Wait, whoa. Let me bring up the game first.
In a peaceful land, paradise is threatened by an unspeakable evil, and only one person has found the power to restore perfect order. In a new action-adventure game for your Super NES comes an exciting tale, The Secret of Mana, from Square, maker of the world's greatest video games.
Yeah, Cheery, when you first played this game, what was your first experience with it? Were you playing it by yourself? Were you playing it with siblings, friends?
So initially, I watched my father and my elder sibling play it, and then I sort of played it by myself and also with siblings a little bit as well. So I kind of went in terms of me defending it as a game. It's very difficult to be objective because of how integral it is to my childhood. So I will say that up front. I'm not going to be unbiased, but hopefully I can at least be fair with my assessment and maybe with some accuracy. But yeah, so I predominantly played with siblings, but when I was older and I went back and played it much further than I got, it was predominantly by myself. What I wanted with the intro of the game as it was loading, I want the audience, especially if you're new to it, to really take on board is the mysticism of the game. I think if there's one word I can describe this game as, it's mystical. So interestingly enough, a bit of background development to sort of tie into the game itself is that it was the actual soundtrack producer. It was his first video game, I believe, with SquareSoft, and he did it in such a way that he wanted a duality of like upbeat and darker, grim tones. And he also wanted where the music came in with the game and wasn't just like a soundtrack planted into a game, irrespective of how it fits. So you might have noticed with the intro, he used whale noises for the logo instead of just like the, like a classic like ding ding in that in that era of video games. It was very like ding ding. Here's a logo. Here's a video game. Very ting, sort of like arcade noises on a cabinet. They use whale noises, and one that's very novel, but it immediately grabs your attention, and it's sort of mystical, like this this sort of majestic creature, and it's like, what is this about? Someone who's just uploading it up for the first time. Whoa, whale noises! What's going on here? And then they do have the scroll of text, the basic story, but then it opens up cinematically as it scrolls up to the sort of like tree, and then it opens up, and the music, as soon as the music picks up, it's along with the weird flamingo creatures flying across, which is a very prime example. Oh gosh, I remember this bit. Sorry, as a prime example of
I just got kidnapped. Oh.
Yes, that is optional, by the way. You can skip this part. It's optional.
Interesting. Okay.
So I'll get on to that in a minute, but it's just an example of where the soundtrack fits into what's happening in the game, but also adds that mysticism. So quickly about what's happening with the goblins, right? Gosh, so I only found out years later this part was actually optional, and you can miss it. Basically, this character you're meeting here, the blonde lass, if you don't meet her here, you meet her much later on. So you can actually not have either an NPC partner, or if you're playing multiplayer, because yes, 3 main characters, 3 players, especially if you have the port for the SNES, which
back then was very novel, having multiple controls in an RPG.
As a criticism of the game, looking back, the AI for the characters, even playing it as a child, it's not abysmal, but it's very problematic. They'll get stuck on things. They'll just stand there and get hit sometimes. They'll if you're walking trying to get past a bridge and there's like a little pixel stone, they're running into the stone, and you're like trying to walk up, but you can't because they're just running into an object.
The sign says "Beware of goblins." That would have been really useful to know 10 seconds ago.
So yeah, so there are optional stuff, and that brings me back into the development process. So one of the most interesting, I don't know, I'll grab my keyboard or my keyboard pad, but one of the most interesting things is the development cycle, where, as some people may know, at the time Nintendo were partnering up with Sony to make a CD-ROM extension to the SNES with their competitor Genesis,
Called the PlayStation.
Yeah, that fell through. Sony were like, maybe games are profitable, and made PlayStation. Rest is history. However, Secret Mana was being developed to have a lot more content and mechanics and stuff and memory usage on a CD rather than a cartridge. Partway through, that whole, CD extension to the console falls flat, and then they have to be like, shit, we need to cut out content, cancel planned content, and fit it in. Which is partly why the translation, as I mentioned before the show, he had 30 days to translate into English, and he also had to cut words out because the English letters needed more space than the local Japanese.
It definitely has that feeling of like these sentence structures, like I need to complete the sentence. It doesn't matter if it doesn't make any sense. Question to the chat, by the way, or those on YouTube. If you have you played this? I'm completely new to this, so it's a completely foreign experience to me. But obviously, there's many people out there who just adore this game. It has a massive following over the years. It's easily up there as like one of the most revered of the genre.
So this is real-time combat, right? Not turn-based.
The combat, right? I'm glad you segued into that. The combat's broken. It's broken in a way that once you get magic, right. The UI is problematic. In that the UI is like a dial system where you have to flick through with D-pad through a dial and then into another dial system, and it's just circles and circles. Not only is that bit cumbersome, but with magic, you go in you pause the combat in a way by going into your UI, right? You spam as magic, and basically everything on the screen freezes apart from the animation of the magic caster, and then down to the boss, and the boss gets stunned. Can you see where I'm going with this? If you have enough items to refresh your mana, you just spam magic until the boss is dead, and it's stun locked. You can pretty much just cheese through all the difficult encounters with magic. Because if you have enough mana, in terms of items, you can just obliterate bosses.
It sounds like my kind of game.
I don't know if you can tell from the way I'm playing, but if you look at the number underneath my character, it goes up to 100%. If you attack before that gets to 100%, you do like piddly damage. So it's not like Zelda where you can just go 500 times and kill the enemy.
And you do have to, so that is the case. And eventually, as you upgrade weapons, and there's different weapons you can upgrade, right? You'll get more and more bars. And if you hold in the attack button, you slow down. And so like this character, for example, his name begins with R. I can't remember his official name.
I called him Cheese, and I have no idea why I called him Cheese.
I do like cheese. But so he kind of like huddles a bit. And he's slowed down, but once you get a full bar and then unleash it, it does so much damage. So it's kind of a little bit tactical in that. Do you want to keep doing a lot of damage once 100% comes along?
Oh,
or
I
do you
just
want
noticed
to
the hunch, yeah. Oh.
Do you want to time it? And all the characters do that. There's quite an array of weapons, which they do change the gameplay slightly in terms of range weapons, because there's a certain weapon that's like, Princess Cena, Warrior Princess, the throwy blade. Circular blade. You can get one of those, and you have to hit a certain hitbox for it to damage. You can't just shoot it across the enemy. It has to hit at the end before it comes back to you. So there are aspects that change the gameplay there, but the magic is very beautiful but very broken. And you basically just pause the game and spam magic if you just want to beat most bosses.
Oh, I have to show this. Watch what he does when he picks up a treasure chest.
Oh yeah.
Just violently smash it on the ground.
And you do get mimics and traps. You do get
Oh,
mimics.
you
and
do
traps.
get mimics. Oh
Right,
god.
You do. So this game, one of the developmental cycles that because they had to cut load of content, right? Not only did they cut mechanics, they cut story, they cut translation breadth, or should I say, depth of narration, and you don't playing later on in the game. You definitely notice weird bits with like an empty dungeon. Or what sort of temple, basically, an empty dungeon, and like suddenly a difficulty spike in terms of gear and enemies. It's really weird, and you definitely notice it.
So I do have a question.
Yeah.
You say there's a lot of cuts in the game, a lot of stuff was removed,
Yes.
and yet you still like adore this game enough that you chose it as like our highlights.
スクエアニュース本日発売前より話題沸騰の聖剣伝説2のゲーム画面が発表になりましたのでご紹介します。いやー実に美しい画面ですね。さすがスクエア。これまで以上のリアルなグラフィックで緊張感もおのずと盛り上がります。しかしこの聖剣伝説2の最大の目玉はなんといっても今巷で噂のモーションバトルです。このアクション画面で戦闘シーンを行うというシステムによって RPG の新しい面白さが飛躍的に広がる。これがモーションバトル。もう従来の RPG とは一線を画すエンターテインメントです。聖剣伝説2。
But you wouldn't have known what was removed. Like you learned about that years later,
I learned
probably.
about it later.
Yeah, but what I'm asking is like, what is it about the experience that's so strong, even without all that stuff removed?
So
that felt it was worth playing.
It comes one. It's co-op, which at that time was quite phenomenal, but it's that sense of mysticism because as you go through the plot's not that deep, to be honest. But from a lot of JRPGs, or it wasn't around that time, unfortunately. However,
Final Fantasy 6.
Apart from 6, okay, there are exceptions. But typically,
Future episode, yeah.
But the setting and the world, the art style, it comes back to mysticism because as you go through it, the soundtrack is phenomenal in that you do have sort of cliche, sort of like there's like a do 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 very upbeat. But there's certain sections where the tone really changes. The music contributes to such a change of tone, which really is a remnant of where it was meant to be a lot grim, a lot more darker in tone, the story and the setting. Which, by the way, certain artists also were meant to work on this, who ended up working on Chrono Trigger. Chrono Trigger
Akira
would
Toriyama,
not
maybe?
exist. Yes, Chrono Trigger would not exist if this game did not have cut content.
Before you get onto that, it does look a lot like it could have been designed by Akira Toriyama.
You want to know a
Main
fun fact?
characters-
Go
Yeah.
ahead.
This game's code name in development was Chrono Trigger.
Was it?
That's how closely related they are. Yeah.
The
Wow,
main
okay.
characters look a lot like the main character of Chrono Trigger, and
It
that's
does look
not
like Chrono, yeah, I see that. Oh.
So basically, if this game didn't have cut content, if that Sony partnership with the CD-ROM extension went ahead, Chrono Trigger would never existed. So you're welcome, I guess.
Oh, bees! Why did it have to be
Oh,
the
the
bees?
bees! They're wasps, yes, and they turn into skeletons when you murder them. It's great. And there's a nice satisfactory like popping noise, like the rattling of bones. But gosh, just bring back memories. But there are
That's what
certain
this section's all about.
The soundtrack. There's certain bits of the soundtrack where it changes tone, and there's a bit in the story quite early on where you infiltrate a cult, right? Literally, you infiltrate a cult who are brainwashing, kidnapping people, and siphoning their life energy. I kid you not. And it's quite a gloomy place with like weird mist effects and zombies and weird like necrotic undead creatures. And it's this weird like. The soundtrack is very, very foreboding and very unsettling. It's like you use bells a lot, and it's like kind of anyway. Can't do it justice. And interestingly, the musician actually based a lot of inspirations on the country of Bali in Indonesia, or the area of Bali, not the country 7. Sorry, not my geography's terrible. Please
Ow.
don't take offense.
Cheese has been poisoned.
And the music's just phenomenal, especially Meridian Dance, which I won't say the concept because it's a major spoiler, but the Meridian Dance is amazing. It's like sorry, anyway.
I'm
can't do
gonna
it justice.
imagine it sounds significantly different in the actual game.
It's amazing. It's like out of nowhere, this like intense pivotal moment of the story, and just like you like your adrenaline shoots up to 100. It's amazing. And although the story's quite basic, the characters you meet and the settings, for me, what's amazing, even the world's not that deep in terms of like regions or like well, for me, the enemy designs and the regional designs of the settings are quite amazing. There's, I mean, I'm trying without spoiling. There's a volcano desert, but there's weird temples and stuff.
I do have
the
a
enemy
spoiler
designs
tag
are-
if you want. You can spoil if you. Okay,
Oh,
I'm sure
I
the
won't.
5 people that haven't played this will be deeply upset by the spoiler.
I really hope they do play it though. I'll be happy if 5 people give it a shot. And definitely try and play co-op. It's much more fun co-op. But there are also
Punch glove.
the cut content, right, was meant to have time travel. It was meant to have alternative routes that led to different endings.
That sounds
Cough,
like
cough,
a certain
Chrono
game,
Trigger.
doesn't it? Yeah.
Cough, cough. And darker in tone. So you can see where a lot of the ideas in the cut content went on to spawn Chrono Trigger.
You're making me imagine like an alternate universe now where Sony or Nintendo won the 90s console race with the Nintendo PlayStation.
Yeah.
And Secret of Mana is being voted the greatest RPG of all time and not Chrono Trigger.
Secret Mana would have been a much more formidable game. I'm competent to state, even though I can't prove it, it never happened. If it wasn't, if the CD thing went correctly and it was a full, it's a game that is missing parts, and I can't say unless obviously it happened how it would be, but based on how Chrono Trigger happened and what did happen in Secret of Mana, I'm confident it would have been a superb, phenomenal gaming experience. It would have been definitely.
Any closing thoughts?
Closing thoughts is that definitely play co-op. Give it a shot. It's fun. It's charming. The gameplay is not too deep, but as you unlock more weapons and magic systems, it gets a bit deeper. I would say, if you want a kind of like relatively light-hearted but mystical journey where the designs of the world and the creatures really drags you into what feels like you've just gone to a completely alien, in the most positive sense of the word, alien world set in like a fey magic. Think of it like a fey fantasy world. It's pretty much just this sense of like charming, playful, yet undertones of dark mysticism that has a banger soundtrack, decent gameplay, especially co-op. Forget the AI.
Also,
Incredible
stay away
music.
from the remake.
Yeah, the remake's not great.
That's an understatement. It's
Yeah.
What makes it not great?
The voice acting's really bad.
it looks
doesn't really
ugly. It
improve
has no charm or personality.
Oh,
I just-
but I will say, if I haven't sold you on it, one last thing. Until you get a certain dragon that you ride around on the world map, and guess what? Once you do, it opens up the world map into like, what's that famous thing on the Nintendo consoles where it's like,
Mode
you know,
7.
Like mode 7 or yeah.
Yeah.
Mode 7's in this game, but before you unlock it, you are shot out of a giant cannon by
I've already found the
by a
cannon.
hippie. By a hippie. I cannot describe him apart from caveman hippie. And you tumble across the Mode 7 map and it's splat onto the ground, and you're like, ow.
Ow.
It's
yeah.
great. The charm of this game.
But the funny thing is, I thought that was like sending me like halfway across the map, and it was only like 3 or 4 screens away.
It can, but you'll eventually unlock Flaming, who is the best beloved dragon in the world.
Cool. That dragon,
gosh,
that's
there's so
got me
much.
sold.
there's so much I could say about this game, and I haven't done justice, but definitely play co-op and give it a shot.
This area is very expansive. I'm kind of concerned I'll die before I find a save point.
Ah, it's a shame you haven't got to the first boss. They need to hear the boss music. They
That's
really
probably not going to happen,
It's
unfortunately.
not going to happen. Gosh, the boss music is just... It's a bit repetitive, but it really sets the tone of like this intense 0 to 100 adrenaline rush.
There is a town called Kipo Village over here. Awesome.
Ah, keep it finished! Kingdom Pandora,
Oh,
guys.
sorry,
now
lady.
what-
I just pushed the lady into... There we go.
Oh, yeah,
90s
it's always-
RPGs, where the NPCs always walked in front of the important things that you need
Yes,
to
it's
do.
classic.
Yeah.
This
Oh.
merchant is always weird because, like, there's several of him in a certain country, and it's
Final
like all the merchants come from the same country.
Final question before we go. Why are all the merchants dancing?
Because they love their goddamn job, that's why. They're so happy to be at work. You can tell it's a fantasy game.
Happy?
right?
God, you, damn it, you stole my joke. Hey there folks, welcome to the end of the video. If you got this far, please allow me to just take a moment of your time to let you know that we do the show every second Sunday over on Twitch. We basically just sit down, myself, Gamer Tom, and our guest, and just talk about RPGs. Any relevant discussion, news, reviews, look backs, that sort of thing. If you want to support us, you can actually have some input on the games that we discuss, as well as the topics, and you can do that over on Patreon, same URL as here. That's TNEQL. So please consider checking that out. I hope you have a good day, and I hope you stay beautiful. Take care.